Did you know two ordinary bicycle repairmen, almost unknown, were the first people to help humans leave the Earth? There are moments in history that only last a few seconds, but are enough to change the direction of humanity. There are dreams that were once considered crazy, but it was that craziness that opened a new era. In the late 19th century, while humanity was still debating whether or not humans could fly, in a small corner of Dayton, Ohio, in 1899, two bicycle repairmen, Wilbur and Orville Wright, began their journey to challenge the limits of the sky. The Wright brothers were not just the creators of the first airplane. They were two completely opposite personalities, but when combined, they created a miracle that changed the world. Wilbur Wright, the elder brother, born in 1867, was a man of calm and thoughtfulness. He was quiet, careful, and looked at every problem with the eye of a true strategist. Wilbur was so patient that he would spend hours analyzing the way the wind moved through a propeller. For him, the dream of flying was not an impulse, but a problem to be solved precisely in every detail. Orville Wright, the younger brother, born in 1871, was full of enthusiasm and passion. He was emotional, creative, and always the first to try out new ideas. Orville loved the feeling of challenge, loved risk, and it was this dare-to-do spirit that helped the designs on paper become reality. If Wilbur was the mind, then Orville was the heart of the whole journey. Two opposite personalities, two different souls, but it was that difference that created one of the greatest couples in the history of science. One thinks, one does. One calculates, one experiments. Thanks to that perfect blend, the dream of touching the sky can become a reality. There are moments in history, lasting only a few seconds, but powerful enough to change the trajectory of humanity. There are dreams, once considered crazy, but that very madness ushered in a new era. More than a century ago, on the desolate sands of North Carolina, where the sea wind howled and the fog hung like a veil over the future, two bicycle repairmen stood silently before a machine the world had never understood. No one believed them, no one supported them, but they believed in the most important thing. Man was born not just to walk under the sky, but to touch it. The cold wind whipped through Kill Devil Hills. On the yellow sand, the Wright Flyer lay like a fragile creature waiting to be awakened. Orville Wright put his hand on the wooden frame, feeling the cold seep into his skin. No one could see, but beneath that calm, his heart was beating so fast it scared him. Beside him, Wilbur Wright was checking every string, every piece of fabric. His hands were steady, but there was an occasional flicker of worry in his eyes. For years, Wilbur had been the stronger one, the one who pulled Orville back up after every failure. But today, he was trembling, not because he was afraid of failure, but because he was afraid of losing his beloved brother. He asked softly, "Orville, are you sure?" Orville looked into his brother's eyes. Wilbur's eyes were filled with faith, but also with unspoken worry. Orville smiled, a small smile, but filled with determination. "If not today, then when?" Wilbur put his hand on his brother's shoulder, a gentle squeeze that carried a silent promise. Orville lay in the cockpit. The cold air hit his face, then ran down his spine. His hands gripped the controls, shaking so much he almost had to squeeze them to keep his composure. Outside, Wilbur was running alongside the plane, his eyes never leaving his brother's. The 12-horsepower engine roared to life, a weak but vital roar, like the first breath of a newborn being. "Go, Orville!" Wilbur shouted. The Wright Flyer began to pitch forward. Sand flew up. The plane shook violently. Orville's heart pounded so hard it felt like it was going to burst out of his chest. Then, the ground began to fall away. The Wright Flyer began to move forward. Sand was flying. The plane shook violently. Orville's heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was going to burst out of his chest. Then, the ground began to pull away. Orville's eyes widened, not from fear, but from excitement, from amazement. For the first time in his life, he felt he was no longer held by the earth, but held by the sky. Below, Wilbur stopped, looked up at the plane as it rose higher. He chugged. His eyes stung. All the strings of fear in his heart snapped, replaced by a huge pride. He whispered into the wind, "You did it. We did it." Orville landed after the first 12 seconds of flight, but those 12 seconds were enough to usher in the era of aviation. He laughed loudly, the laugh of a man who had just conquered his deepest fear. Wilbur ran to him, knelt down, and hugged his brother tightly. There was no crowd, no cameras, no applause, just the two brothers in the cold sea breeze, hugging each other in a choked joy. They had no idea that that small moment on December 17th, 1903 would make the whole world look up and say, "We can fly." From that day on, the sky was no longer just for birds. It was for all of us.